assalamu alaikum to all the participants. I think it's a great initiative. I was very happy to see the Youth General Assembly organizing such an event and talking about what the role of the youth is in developing a better tomorrow for Pakistan. Not only are you going to be talking about things that are important, such as climate change, gender, the role of the media, but also look at the way democracy has evolved, the constitutional issues facing the country, because you're all stakeholders. And you're more than just ordinary stakeholders. You are the stakeholders which are going to drive the way this country is going into the future. You are the stakeholders that are going to make a difference. So everything you do, everything you say has impact, and you can make a lot of difference. Now, I've been asked to talk about changing gender attitudes. And for some, this may be an important issue, particularly for all the young women in the audience. And for others, they may be thinking, well, it's relevant, but is it important, or is it just a woman thing, something that women like to talk about, reshaping gender attitudes? Well, I would say, let me share my experience with you and tell you why it's important and why it's not just a woman thing, why it affects all of you, each and every one of you in this room, and why each and every one of you has a role to play. So let's just look at a few statistics first. A population of 227 million, we come in the top 5 populations of the world. 49% of this population is women. So this is a figure you just cannot ignore. 31% of this population is under the age of 30. So men and women under the age of 30. 37% of this population don't go to school. If you look at the role of women, 21% of women are in the labor force. 23% of women in technical and professional work. 20% women in parliament and holding some form of public office, less than 2% in the higher judiciary, 12% in the district and session courts, 21% of women get married before the age of 18, only 3% own houses in their own name, and more than 32% experience some form of physical abuse. Now, these are figures that are alarming. And these figures tell a story. On the Gender Global Gap Index, we rank 141 out of 156 in the year 2022. There are many different indexes against which this entire global gap is calculated. And these are things that you should be looking at. And in fact, you're going to be discussing some of them over the rest of the day today. But for me, why is this relevant? This is relevant, this is important, because it says 4 things. It says that there is a problem of participation. There is a problem of inclusion. There is a problem of visibility. And there is a problem of acceptability. I call these target areas. This is what I focus on. And this is because despite the progress that women have made over the years, in the 75 years of this country's history, there are still barriers. Cultural, social, there are traditional barriers, there are expectations, there are presumptions against women. These barriers form a narrative, and that is the narrative that keeps women out of schools, out of the workplace, away from decision making, where it doesn't give her financial autonomy, economic autonomy, and most important, self-autonomy. So you may ask, obviously the most obvious question, well, what have you done about it? And what has your sector done about it? What about laws and what about the court? And my answer is that the courts and the law have played a significant role in improving the position of women. There are laws that are for women which help empower women. There are laws which protect women. There are laws which ensure that women are not harassed and are not discriminated against. So where lies the problem? The problem lies in implementation and execution. The problem lies in the mindset. The problem is that despite laws, despite judgments, we're just not willing to change the way we think. We want to think the same way. We want to keep doing things the same way. And I give you examples from judgments that I have rendered or what the court has done. So the two-finger test, the virginity test which was banned, which was declared against human dignity in one of my judgments in the High Court. And what does the court see in this case? The court sees that a test which is performed on rape victims, which has no medical or scientific basis whatsoever, is performed day after day after day by female doctors and is used in courts by female judges as well as by male judges. And when I asked, why do you do that? The answer was, Madam, ऐसा ही होता है ना, इसी की ज़रूरत होती है. And I asked, इसकी क्यों ज़रूरत होती है? And they said, तो और कैसे पता चलेगा कि रेप हुई है कि नहीं? So you're using a test which you don't understand. You've not questioned it, but you insist that you have to do it because that's the only way to determine whether a woman has been raped or not. So what does this tell you? There is a mindset in the system. There is a way of thinking that is prevailing. Look at inheritance rights. These are God-given rights. They have been recognized and protected by the courts time and time again, judgment after judgment in favor of women. Yet still women are deprived of their inheritance. The law is not depriving them. The courts are not depriving them. It's the people. It's the mindset. That is what needs to change. Look at the workforce. What is stopping women from going to work? Is it the law that's stopping them? Is it the courts that's stopping them? Or is it the mindset? In a judgment where women had competed and wanted to be a part of the anti-terrorism squad, I had talked about stereotyping and cultural barriers and spoke about the fact that these are women who competed on merit, and they topped on the merit. So they did better than many of their male counterparts, but they were not given a job because the system said, औरतों को बाहर फील्ड में हम नहीं भेज सकते. But क्यों नहीं भेज सकते? These are women who want to join the force. They are ready to join the force. They are ready to die in the name of their country on duty if they have to. तो क्यों नहीं भेज सकते? Because we believe that's not the right place for women to be. And this is the narrative that we have to address. This is the mindset that we have to address. This is the change that we need to see. I give you another example, domestic violence. Domestic violence is a crime in Pakistan. It's an offense. But would you believe? Not a single reported case. Not a single reported case. These cases don't come to the court. Why? Because by and large we believe, as people, as a society, domestic violence, ye ghar ka mamla hai, private matter. This is not something that we bring into the court, that we bring into the public. So where is the problem? Again I ask you, where is the problem? Another question, a lot of you will be involved in or have already been involved in, nikah nama. It gives women lots of rights, lots of rights. But what do? We cut them all out. We cut out all the clauses, we don't fill it up, and what do we say? नहीं नहीं ये अच्छी बात नहीं होती, अभी तो शादी हुई नहीं है, अभी से ही हम पहले rights के ऊपर बातें करेंगे, नहीं नहीं ऐसे नहीं होता, हमारे बड़ों ने भी नहीं किया था, हम भी नहीं करेंगे. So where's the problem again? Here you have a document, a contract that's going to protect her. That's going to protect her right to what she's entitled to in the event that there is a separation, there is a divorce. But the family doesn't want to fill it up. And the girl doesn't really know what to do. Look at gender-based violence cases. As a society, I ask you, are we outraged by gender-based violence cases? Do we respond? Do we react? Do we even think about it, or is it just another case that we've heard about in the news? Or is it just another thing that we see on the media? But we're not outraged as people. I don't see people reacting to gender-based violence as they do to many other things. There's nobody talking about these victims of gender-based violence cases. And in fact, what do? The system, the courts, the justice sector, we sometimes pardon it in the name of honor. Sometimes we say that whatever she did, it brought shame to her family, and so he was compelled to do it, whether he's a father, whether he's a brother or a husband. Or we say, you know, she acted in a disrespectful manner, so she sort of like asked for it. This is what we do. And so do we work on changing that narrative? Do we react to that? This is something to think about. Why do we accept it? Gender-based violence is on the rise. There is a lot of gender-based violence cases in this country, but this is something we don't talk about. We don't even collect data on it, so I can't even stand here and tell you beyond the 32% figure that I have, that how much on the rise it has been. So the bottom line is that what do we have to address? Mindset, attitudes. We have to address the way we think. We have to change it. And remember those target areas, the participation, the inclusion. Remember visibility. Remember acceptability. We have to talk about this. Why? Because we live in a system where the laws, where the policies, where the rules were made by men. With all due respect, it was made by men. Women were not included in this. So they decided how women should respond, how women should behave, what are the standards for women, without really including the narrative of the women. And that is why I say it is time that this narrative changes. We must bring in the gender perspective. We must bring in now the stories of the women. We must look at their experiences and talk real time from what their experiences are, their responses are, how they think. You have to ask yourself, as the youth of tomorrow, that what is that world that you want to live in? What sort of society do you want to live in? Do you want a place which is safe for your women? Do you want to grow as a country economically, financially? Or do you want to keep repeating and perpetuating this thought process where the gender perspective has literally no relevance in the system? So the gender perspective is something that we need to talk about. And as you go through the day today, I urge you to look at the gender perspective. Look at the gender perspective in climate change, because women are most affected by disaster. Women are affected by disaster, but nobody pays attention to the needs of these women who are affected by disaster. When you talk about parliamentary democracy and constitutional crisis, ask yourself, is the gender, 49% of this population, aware and conscious of its rights? Is it aware of what's going on in the country? Are they a real stakeholder? Do they participate? Or is there something, a man thing, because it's politics, it's a man thing. The women are good in the kitchen, and we sit in the drawing room and we discuss the politics of the country. Do we want to educate our women on these things, or do we want to see them as real-time stakeholders? When you talk about the media and the emerging challenges like social media, what is the role that the media plays? What is the language that we use when we talk about women, when we talk about the stories of the victims? How do we address them? Do we give them that dignity, that privacy, that respect? Each and every one of you, as a user on social media, do you think about these things? Do you think about the impact it will have? Do you think about what it means to say to someone, to comment on something which you may not have much knowledge about? I think these are things you need to think about. These are things that are important from the gender perspective's point of view, because once something is thrown out there in a manner that is not easy to defend, the gender is left always defending itself. She's always in a position where she has to explain herself. She's never in a position where the system is explaining to her why it's unfortunate that things have happened in that particular way. And I say this particularly to all the young men, that rethink the way you think things already. Don't accept everything the way it's been handed down to you. Rethink it. Think about the role that you want to have and the kind of society that you want to live in. So the gender perspective. The gender perspective for me is really about the voice of the woman. It's about the story of the woman. It's about how the woman looks at things. And I give you a few examples. In the two-finger test case, the whole issue was about how women have to be tested in order to determine whether they are raped. Now, world over, there are standards and protocols that are followed. But we were following this age-old test which was given in a medical jurisprudence by a man named Moody, based on some traditional sort of practice, customary practice, which was practiced in India a long, long time ago. And surprisingly, even he changed his view many years back, but we continue to follow that view. And it took a woman judge to sit there and say, hang on a second. Why are you doing this? This doesn't even make sense. It doesn't count for all those women who are married, who've had children. It doesn't explain how the test will work. So there's no medical or scientific backing in that. In another case, many cases in fact involving custody, we talk a lot about the mother's right and the father's right and how the mother loses the right because she's married a second time. Well, in a recent judgment, the court has looked at custody issues again from the gender perspective and said, this really is not about the mother or the father, it's about the child. It's about the well-being of the child, the safety of the child. It's about the environment in which you want the child to grow up. So you have to look and see what is good for the child. And a second marriage doesn't automatically disentitle a mother from custody. The overall general welfare of the minor has to be looked at. In cases of inheritance, time and again, the courts have created ways in which it has said women are entitled to their inheritance, come what may. Even if women come late to court, 20 years, 10 years, 30 years late, the court still finds ways to give them what their right is. But the problem is in the implementation. The problem is in the enforcement, in the execution. We're just not willing to change the way we think. We're not willing to change the way we want to do things. And so it's now left to you. It's left to you to help build a new narrative, to change the way we think. Bring in the gender perspective, just like you want to bring in the youth perspective. These are perspectives that are important because they touch 30% of the population, 49% of the population. These are the stakeholders. The people are the ones who matter the most because they are the ones upon whom these laws are made for and upon whom these laws have to be implemented. And if a law is made and doesn't make sense in the way it's being implemented, you have to speak up about it. You have to share the experiences to say this doesn't make sense. But if a law is there and it's there for your good, then you have to use it. You can't then blame the system because you're not using the law. So what do I have to say? What is my message? Each and every one of you are agents of change. Each and every one of you has a voice. Use your voice. Use the way you think. Change the narrative. Change the vocabulary. Become inclusive. Teach my generation how to become tolerant. This is the way forward. This is the way we are going to make a difference. Each and every one of you has your own legacy to leave behind. So make that legacy and become that youth that will lead Pakistan into a better tomorrow. Thank you.